At the time of filming this episode, I have just finished celebrating the Easter season, and the resurrection is something that was talked about a great deal at church. And this chapter, Alma chapter 40, talks a lot about the resurrection. Why is the resurrection so important? Well, it is the key to caring about what happens in the next life. It's the key to caring about what we do in this life. Without the resurrection, if we know that just the minute we die, it's all over, poof, then why would we take our life now very seriously? It's kind of like if we just knew that in a few years it was all going to end. Well, it just doesn't give us the perspective to make the character changes that we need to make, to call on the Lord in strength that we need to do in our lives now. But the resurrection tells us there is more, much, much more to come. So what we do here and now matters immeasurably, and we should take that seriously. So, okay, we're in Alma chapter 40. Alma is on this is the second chapter of him speaking with his son Corianton. Alma, of course, is a great prophet. Corianton is one of his younger children who has struggled with his worthiness and his behaviors. In the last chapter, it talked about how Corianton kind of boasted of his own wisdom, and then he went and ran off with a harlot, and that caused a lot of people to question Alma and his missionary efforts and kind of dismiss him, which that's valid, that's understandable. As representatives of Christ, you're kind of expected to hold the line of behavior, and Corianton wasn't doing that. So Alma's continuing on in his conversation with Corianton to try to explain to him why your actions even matter. Because it's possible that Corianton didn't recognize that life isn't just all fun and games and then you die. The resurrection is real. You are going to be accountable for what you do and how you impact other people. And that is what this chapter is all about. So let's get going with that. All right, verse 1, "Now my son, here is somewhat more I would say unto thee, for I perceive thy mind is worried concerning the resurrection of the dead." And again, this just comes on the heels of him reminding him that his worthiness and his actions and his character impact other people, and he really needs to change, turn around, commit, and take his life seriously. "Behold, I say unto you, there is no resurrection," or I would say, in other words, this mortal does not put on immortality, this corruption does not put on incorruption until after the coming of Christ. Because this was maybe around 74 years before Christ was born when this portion of the scriptures were written. So the resurrection was not a thing yet. So he's just saying it doesn't happen yet, not until after Christ comes. "But behold, he bringeth to pass the resurrection of the dead. But behold, my son, the resurrection is not yet. Now I unfold unto you a mystery. Nevertheless, there are many mysteries which are kept, but no one knoweth, save God himself. But I show unto you one thing which I have inquired diligently of God, that I might know, and that is concerning the resurrection." So Alma, again, a great prophet, he's given his life to God. He's given his life to the ministry, to teach and invite all to come to Christ, to live the gospel. He has lacked some clarity in the past on if the resurrection was real and what it all meant. But he said he has inquired diligently of God. I imagine for a prophet, that probably was a lot of prayer and fasting and searching the records he did have, a lot of meditation, contemplation, and even more prayer. But he's gotten some answers from God. And so that is what he's about to share with Corianton and, of course, with all of us. All right, here's what he learned. "Behold, there is a time appointed that all shall come forth from the dead. Now when this time cometh, no one knows, but God knoweth the time which is appointed." So basically, there is going to be a time where the grave's open and you're going to come forth. But he doesn't know exactly when that is going to be. "Now whether this shall be at one time, or a second time, or a third time, that men shall come forth from the dead, it mattereth not. For God knoweth all these things, and it sufficeth to me to know this is the case, that there is a time appointed that all shall rise from the dead." So again, he's not getting super technical on there's going to be this many resurrections and it's going to happen in this order. He's saying, I don't really care. It doesn't really matter that much. God knows. But the point is, everyone is going to have a chance to come forth and be accountable. Verse 6, now there must needs be a space between the time of death and the time of resurrection. And now I would inquire what becometh of the souls of men from this time of death to the time appointed for the resurrection. Now whether there's more than one time appointed for men to rise, it mattereth not, for all do not die at once, and this mattereth not. All is as one day with God, and time is only measured to men. To summarize, he's saying after you die, and then when you come forth, there's going to be some little space there. And, maybe it's going to vary, but he's not too worried about it. If, people are always dying at different times, God's in control of it. He's not overthinking it. Again, he's just saying there is a space in time. Therefore, there is a time appointed unto men that they should rise from the dead, and there is a space between the time of death and the resurrection. Again, he's bringing out this point. There is some kind of space. Now, concerning the space of time, what becometh of the souls of men is the thing which I have inquired diligently of the Lord to know, and this is the thing which I do know. This is exciting. What happens between that time when you die and when you're going to rise again with your resurrected body? When that time cometh when all shall rise, then they shall know that God knoweth all the times which are appointed unto men. Now concerning the state of the soul between death and the resurrection, behold, it has been made known unto me by an angel. So this is cool. All of his fasting, prayer, meditating, searching, pondering, reflecting, pleading with God has resulted in this prophet eventually receiving a visitation from an angel. And this is what he learned from the angel. So I'm all ears. I hope you are too. The spirits of all men, as soon as they are departed from this mortal body, yea, the spirits of all men, whether they be good or evil, are taken home to that God who gave them life. And then shall it come to pass that the spirits of all those who are righteous are received into a state of happiness, which is called paradise, a state of rest, a state of peace, where they shall rest from all their troubles, from all care and sorrow. And then shall it come to pass that the spirits of the wicked, yea, who are evil, for behold, they have no part nor portion of the Spirit of the Lord, for behold, they chose evil works rather than good. Therefore the spirit of the devil did enter into them and take possession of their house. These shall be cast into outer darkness, and there shall be weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth. And this because of their iniquity, being led captive by the will of the devil. So far what the angel has taught him is basically you're going to be in one of two conditions when you die. You will be inheriting some state of happiness, some state of paradise and rest if you have been essentially a righteous person. If you have done the devil's bidding, let evil enter into you, then you'll be cast into outer darkness where there's weeping, wailing, and gnashing of teeth. Now, how do you account for this? Is something I think about because I'm definitely, that overthinker. But I think, well, gosh, there's a lot of middle ground. I feel like there's a lot. I mean, all of us are in some kind of middle place. None of us are in like total, deeply enlightened spiritual bliss at all times. So, and I don't hang out like with everybody on the planet, but it just doesn't feel, well, I'm probably speaking out of turn by saying it. I don't think there's anybody that's all the way down the evil rabbit hole. Actually, that's wrong. There are definitely plenty of people who are all the way down the evil rabbit hole. But it does feel like there's a lot of us that are in an in-between place, still trying to figure ourselves out. So I'm not entirely sure what that all looks like. Maybe if God just really genuinely knows the intents of our heart, or if by the time we die, we've at least figured out enough to have settled into some kind of pattern with our hearts. But I personally think it's a little more on the rare side that someone's going to be totally giving their soul over to evil. But whatever, it's probably not. I probably don't even need to comment on all of that. My point is, he's giving two classes of people. The righteous are going to go to paradise and bliss. The wicked are who've allowed the devil to take over their soul, loosely and metaphorically speaking, I guess, they will be in some kind of like prison and misery. And how that all works, the finer points, God alone knows. It's just that's the basic outlines. And as for me, I'm going to try to be in the first category. I'm sure that's what most of us would like. Now, this is the state of the souls of the wicked. He's talking about the spirit, the outer darkness. This is the state of the souls of the wicked, yea, in darkness, and a state of awful, fearful looking for the fiery indignation of the wrath of God upon them. Thus they remain in this state, as well as the righteous in paradise, until their time of their resurrection. So, long story being short, you go to some place. If you've been a good girl or boy, you're going to go to some place pleasant. If you've been a very bad girl or boy, you will go to some very unpleasant location to await your resurrection. Now there are some that have understood that this state of happiness and this state of misery of the soul before the resurrection was a first resurrection. Yea, I admit it may be termed a resurrection, the raising of the spirit or the soul, and their consignation to happiness or misery, according to the words which have been spoken. Behold, again, it hath been spoken that this is a first resurrection, a resurrection of all those who have been, or who are, or who shall be down from the resurrection of Christ from the dead. He's saying, in essence, that some have termed it a first resurrection if you just simply have your consciousness restored to you after death. So maybe you don't have your body, but you are conscious. And he goes on to say he doesn't look at that as a resurrection, though. So, indeed, he says, now we do not suppose that this first resurrection, which is spoken of in this manner, can be the resurrection of the souls and their consignation to happiness or misery. You cannot suppose that this is what it meaneth. So just having the awake consciousness of your spirit is not the resurrection. Behold, I say unto you, nay, it meaneth the reuniting of the soul and the body of those from the days of Adam down to the resurrection of Christ. Now, whether the souls and the bodies of those who have been spoken shall all be reunited at once, the wicked as well as the righteous, I do not say. Let it suffice that I say that they all shall come forth, or in other words, their resurrection shall come to pass before the resurrection of those who die after the resurrection of Christ. So I think what he's saying is that there's going to be a resurrection of beings at the time that Christ is resurrected. And indeed there was. I don't know how generalized it was, but we do have record that there were graves opened and resurrected beings came forth, after Christ. I think that's what he's talking about. But he continues to affirm that he's not hung up on the timetable. He is not saying that I know exactly when and how many times or whatever. He's just saying it's going to happen. Now, my son, I do not say that their resurrection cometh at the resurrection of Christ, but behold, I give it as my opinion that the souls and bodies are reunited of the righteous at the resurrection of Christ and his ascension into heaven. So I like his clarification. It has a lot of humility that he says, this is my opinion, that they're all going to be resurrected when Christ is, but I don't know for sure. So that's some good humility there. But whether it be at his resurrection or after, I do not say, but this much I say, that there is a space between death and the resurrection of the body, a state of the soul in happiness or in misery, until the time which is appointed of God, that the dead shall come forth, and be reunited, both body and soul, and be brought to stand before God to be judged according to their works. Yea, this bringeth about the resurrection of those things of which hath been spoken by the mouths of the prophets. And the soul shall be restored to the body, and the body to the soul. Yea, and every limb and joint shall be restored to its body. Yea, even a hair of the head shall not be lost, for all things shall be restored to their perfect and proper frame. And now, my son, this is the restoration, which has been spoken by the mouths of the prophets. And then shall the righteous shine forth in the kingdom of God. But behold, an awful death cometh upon the wicked, for they die as to things pertaining to the things of righteousness, for they are unclean. And no unclean thing can inherit the kingdom of God, but they are cast out and consigned to partake of the fruits of their labors or their works, which have been evil, and they drink the dregs of a bitter cup. And there he closes the chapter. I think he's really trying to make the point with Corianton that what you do here and the character you're recreating and the spirit that inhabits you matters. You're going to bring it with you into that next realm. You will be judged of God. You're going to go to what realm is appropriate for you spiritually, and you need to take it seriously. That death is not the end, or your fun little young adult life is not the end. There's a lot more, and you need to think ahead about what's going to happen. Thank you for joining me. And please, if you're curious to learn more about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, see the links in the description for how you can get help from the missionaries to learn more. And also you will find a link to my website if you want to connect with me. And I will see you in the next chapter.